Picture this. It's 1946 on the Red Square in Moscow. Thousands of German soldiers are marching and loudly shouting, "Heil Hitler!" Just 3 days before Stalin and all of Russian high command were either executed or shipped off to prisoner camps after German troops successfully captured Moscow and completed Operation Barbarossa, which aim was to capture Russia and bring it under control of the Third Reich. In this reality, Nazi Germany didn't attack the Soviet Union in 1941, but probably much later, Germany would have been focused on first taking the rest of Europe under its control, which would have been completed by March of 1944. After that, Germany would have rebuilt its army, which took heavy losses in the capture of Great Britain. In this timeline, Great Britain wasn't backed by the United States and was captured around January 1944, but not before Churchill and a big part of Britain's population fled to the United States to avoid being under Nazi control. In the rest of 1945, Germany would have produced a significant amount of military equipment, including Panthers, which were Germany's go-to tank during that time. These tanks were equipped with armor ranging from 16 to 100 millimeters thick, and a 75 millimeter turret capable of firing rounds that could penetrate almost any type of armor, destroying 80% of Soviet tanks in only 1 to 2 shots. The Panthers were also equipped with a secondary machine gun, which had a firing rate of up to 600 rounds per minute, capable of cutting down vehicles or Soviet infantry within seconds. The tanks were powered by a V-12 Maybach engine, generating about 690 horsepower, allowing them to reach speeds of approximately 30 miles per hour. Additionally, the German army would have recruited many new soldiers from captured territories, converting them into soldiers fighting for the cause of the Third Reich. This would have resulted in the acquisition of millions of soldiers ready to fight against the Soviets. It's important to note that in our timeline, the Soviets and Germany were still bound by the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression agreement between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. In reality, this pact was broken on June 22, 1941, when Nazi Germany launched an attack on the Soviet Union. As in the real world, the Soviets were caught by surprise in this hypothetical scenario, as they did not expect Germany to break the non-aggression pact. This gave the German forces an advantage since they initially only faced poorly organized Soviet soldiers who were ill-prepared for such a massive invasion. In our world, Nazi Germany attacked the Soviet Union with more than 3 million soldiers, supported by 650,000 troops from German allies such as Finland and Romania. However, in this alternate scenario, Germany launched its attack on the Soviet Union in February 1946, with a force exceeding 7 million soldiers, supported by over 50,000 aircraft and 200,000 tanks. Battles that prevented Germany from winning in our world, like the Battle of Stalingrad or the Siege of Leningrad, were quickly won in this alternate timeline due to the sheer size of the German army, which completely overwhelmed Soviet forces. The only battle that proved difficult for the Germans was the capture of Moscow, as over 1 million Soviet soldiers had constructed an extensive trench system, which was highly effective in defending against the millions of German soldiers assaulting the city. However, in the end, the size of the German army was enough to destroy these trench systems and capture Moscow. The Soviets fought to the last man, refusing to consider surrender, even though the outcome was clear long before the battle concluded. After the Germans won the battle, they captured Stalin and a large portion of the Soviet high command in the Kremlin, as they had refused to evacuate to Siberia or Central Asia. Now let's take a look into Germany in 1946. Hitler is sitting in the Reichstag building in Berlin, thinking about what he's going to do with the Soviet Union. The initial plan was to convert the Soviet Union into Lebensraum, which was essentially just land for Germany to grow crops and establish wider German-based communities throughout Europe. First off, the Nazis would have established a temporary government in the Soviet Union, which would have consisted of German field generals, which lead the attacks on the German-Soviet front. After that, the Germans would have started carrying out the so-called General Plan Ost, or General Plan for the East, which was a long-term plan to dominate Eastern Europe and turn the population into slave laborers. After that, the conquered land was to be Germanized, which meant that German settlers would move into the area and impose German culture in those regions. The General Plan Ost also aimed to exterminate an estimated tens of millions of Slavic people, particularly in Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and Belarus. These people would have been displaced, killed, starved, or worked to death in German work camps. This plan also included the destruction of Bolshevism and communism in the Soviet Union and Eastern countries due to communists and Bolshevists being labeled as so-called Untermenschen or undesirables by the German High Command. The public was supposed to be fed with National Socialist propaganda to convert them into obedient slaves that the Nazis could use to do whatever they wanted. Of course, a lot of other people like Jews were also considered as undesirables by the Nazis and were also to be exterminated or displaced. The last phase of the plan was the economic exploitation of the captured territories, since Nazi Germany viewed the Soviet Union as a vast hub for resources that could fuel the German war effort and economy. The Soviet Union had and still has a lot of agricultural lands, especially in Ukraine, which produces over 90 million metric tons of grain each year. This would be enough to make about 8 billion standard loaves of bread. The Soviet Union also has and had a lot of natural resources like oil and metals, which were of great use to the Germans since they could be used to build weapons, planes, and tanks. Once the Soviet Union was Germanized, it was to be integrated into the German Reich. This campaign would have cost millions of people their lives and their home. The capture of the Soviet Union was the final goal of Nazi Germany, and the end of the so-called Endsieg or End-Win, which was the goal of the Nazi campaign to capture a big part of Europe. But to be honest, the war would have probably continued after the Endsieg was achieved. Nazi documents show that the aim after the capture of the Soviet states was to conquer Asia together with Imperial Japan, to expand the Lebensraum and the Third Reich. And to be honest, they would have probably kept attacking countries even after taking Asia. The destruction they would have caused would be unfathomable today. Hundreds of millions would have died and billions more would live under extremely bad conditions. If the Soviets and Americans wouldn't have stopped Germany, at least half of the world would be controlled by the Axis powers, consisting of Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and Italy today. We all need to be very thankful that the Soviets and Americans managed to destroy the Axis powers and treated Germany nicely and rebuild it after the World War. If the Allied powers didn't rebuild Germany, a Third World War would have probably already broken out and caused even more destruction. The Allies learned from the First World War that leaving an economically destroyed country lying around and not helping it is just going to cause another dictator to rise to power and maybe even start a world war. We also can't forget that the Treaty of Versailles was a big reason why Hitler could rise to power and was able to brainwash a whole country. To sum up, Hitler's plan for the Soviet Union was to kill people they saw as undesirables, Germanize the country, and also rob its resources to use in other wars. We hope you liked this video. If you stayed till the end, please leave a like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn your notifications on so you know when we release out next video. Till then, have a great time.